it's a dying thing. But they're hanging on like dinosaurs, you know. And it's like the dinosaurs flicking their tails, and as they die, as they sink into the mud.
They can utilize the existing infrastructure. You can use the same fuel tankers, the same fueling stations, and it's just a different liquid fuel to transport and fill up. I think people are going to need to take it more and more seriously because it does make sense. This idea is not new. It's been around for 100 years. Unless someone's going to package things and make it accessible, there was going to be very few people doing it except for a handful of people just experimenting.
Essentially, the original diesel engine was designed to burn vegetable oil. It was later modified to burn petroleum diesel.
People say, now do dogs chase you down the street when you're running on that vegetable oil? People ask, where do you get the grease? How do you get grease? What do you do when you run out of grease? A lot of people don't realize that you can still use your diesel tank if you can't find grease. Is it going to destroy my engine? Is it going to void my warranty? How much is it going to cost? How much does vegetable oil cost? A lot of people don't consider the fact that you could use a waste product. They just think vegetable oil. They're like, well, I was looking at the grocery store and vegetable oil is $7 a gallon. It's like, yeah, it is. Don't buy it.
You've got, what used to be referred to as the big three players, Grease Car, Neoteric, and Greasel. And it's questionable who really got started first. I think Grease Car and myself were pretty much neck and neck.
Actually purchased 2 of the currently commercially available systems and found them to be insufficient for use in a motor worth owning.
From what I have seen of other products out there, I'm nervous for some of these folks because, I'd rather be sort of competing on a marketplace with them than some of the big shots that are going to be getting into it once the real money starts rolling in.
There's people who say, oh, everybody should join together and create this big one veggie, one love conglomerate and everything like that. Number one, everybody involved in this ego is way too big to do that. Number one. And number two, it doesn't hurt to have some competition out there. The basic concept is so simple and so much the same that, all the major conversion companies out there do pretty much the same thing.
Everybody knows that there's going to come a point where any source of energy is going to sort of flatten off and then start declining. Doesn't matter what it is, unless it's truly renewable. For oil, it's certainly going to have it. It's a finite resource. So take any place you like, say the Gulf of Mexico. Sooner or later, you're going to get to a point, we may be there already, where a further exploration becomes economically so prohibitive that the actual production levels are going to level off and decline. That's the peak. It's going to happen everywhere at some point. The only debate is where is it going to happen, at which point, and there will be alternatives.
People come into it because they're against the war. Some people come into it because of the environmental. Some people because they just want, free fuel. Some people for all three.
We're at an early stage in a movement, and it's going to take people who are kind of out there and really want to try something different and are genuinely concerned about it for whatever reason. You'll meet people who are, I hate them Arabs. Or you'll meet people who are like, I'm sick of breathing dirty air. And you get people who are like, I'm cheap. I just don't want to spend the money. It's going to take guys like you gathering all this information. You know, your deal is going to serve as like kind of a compendium of what is going on. You know, who's got what are they doing, why are they doing it? And it might make people realize, man, we are disorganized, really disorganized.
It requires more of you. I mean, it's not as simple as going to the gas station.
They're like, heck yeah, man, I'll run on grease. I'll just put grease in the car. They give no thought to where are you going to get the grease, how are you going to deal with filtering it. I mean, it is a huge commitment.
They want to go and cipher it out of the grease trap. You want to take from the grease trap?
We'll back our car up to it. We have hoses, and we'll put one end in, and we'll pump it into the tank.
Let me tell you a secret. McDonald's and Wendy's both use canola oil, 100% vegetable. And the Wendy's guy was more than willing for me to come pump out his barrel. But I didn't have that setup. I needed to pick him up in cubies, so that's why I did this other deal with this high-end restaurant. So for you guys traveling, stop at a Wendy's because they use good oil.
So I see you're at McDonald's. You got lots of grease here. So how many miles per gallon of grease you get?
25.
Really?
25 miles.
What's it smell like? Like let me smell it. Let me turn it on. It smells better than regular diesel. I remember when it was 29 cents a gallon. So it's nice to see there are still young, innovative people in America. Go for it.
You are related to vegetable oil where there's a lot of crap food being cooked in vegetable oil. So you're dependent upon all these Americans eating all the food so you can be environmentally sensitive. It's a tragedy, but you know, you're going to turn McDonald's into a sacred place.
There's some things that remain constant through them, no matter what your estimates are. There must be significant conservation. But whether a short peak is good or bad depends on the answer to the first question. If it has the effect of accelerating programs that ought to be taken anyway for conservation, for renewable energy and change of lifestyle, well, then it'll be a good thing. If it turns out to be, you know, something that suddenly affects the way life goes on, it could be catastrophic. But our current, you know, extravagant energy wasting lifestyle is the result of what is probably the most awesome social engineering project ever carried out in history.
You know, this guy shows up in a little rabbit, not unlike this one, and he says he just switches back and forth, and I says, well, I've got to do that, and that was probably about 3 years ago. And I thought about it. I mean, you know, there's the environmental reasons. That was a big plus. But other than that, it was just the idea of free fuel, you know. It's like liquid gold. I mean, you know, it looks kind of black when you look at it, or maybe even kind of green tinge to it, but it's homogeneous, you know, it's all the same. So you go dip down in there and take a look at it and take a sample, and it's see-through, you know, you can see right through it, and it's, okay, it's good for go, you know, let's take it. Well, the basic issue with vegetable oil as a fuel, even though it's very similar to diesel fuel in most of its chemical properties and energy content, is that it's so much thicker than diesel fuel is. One solution that, you know, had become adopted was to do a chemical modification to those oil molecules to, you know, thin them out and combine them with alcohol, and that's what biodiesel is.
I started out like most people hearing about biodiesel and looking into that, and kind of got turned off by the chemical process of it. Decided to try my hand at a straight vegetable oil conversion. Had an old Toyota pickup, got the thing converted, flipped the switch and waited for it to blow up, and it didn't.
You either need to modify the oil to make biodiesel, or you need to modify your vehicle to accept the vegetable oil.
Now, straight vegetable oil, the whole concept is you're modifying the vehicle. You build an entire vegetable oil fuel system, you start on the diesel. Once the engine's warmed up, you can use waste heat from the engine in the form of coolant to heat the vegetable oil. And then once that oil gets hot enough, the viscosity of the oil comes down similar to diesel fuel, and you can just burn that stuff. So then you can burn a fuel which is just a byproduct, a waste product of restaurants, and which is essentially free.
A year ago, it was just myself with 2 part-time employees in a space, you know, about a fifth the size of what we have now. Fast forward to a year, and you know, we're in a much larger place. We've got about 7 full-time employees and another 3 part-time employees. It feels like we're constantly chasing this thing that's growing faster than we can grow with it.
When I saw you guys go by, I mean, I said, wow, that's interesting, you know. Because there's travelers, you know, and they must have something in the trunk that makes them put the thing up there. Of course, it had to be you guys.
In 50 years or less, there will be ways of using, whether it's grease or other alternative sources of fuel that are going to be evolved a lot further. But today it's exciting that you guys in this project are taking the first steps and saying, hey, we can go across the country.
It's kind of nice to talk about it as an alternative lifestyle, and people like that, really. People are sick and tired of the way we're living now and being under the pressure of violence and war, being scared all the time.
It began around the Second World War when 3 major corporations, GM, Firestone, and Standard Oil of California, bought up and destroyed the very efficient electric railway system in Los Angeles. And they were brought to court on charges of conspiracy and condemned. So yes, it was a conspiracy. That began what turned Los Angeles into the monstrosity that it is.
So now Los Angeles is choked with cars, really bad air, and the same thing is happening. I can name cities that are just dying from burning fossil fuels. I mean, it's getting to crisis proportions, and when it does, it's going to be too late.
Here in New England, there were also very efficient